A great breakout when your forefathers went frog leaping across the solar system on their way to the stars. Asteroid belts probably teeming with them now. New frontier men, pioneers waiting to spread across the galaxy like a tidal wave or a disease. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Invisible Enemy, written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin and directed by Derek Goodwin in his only Doctor Who directorial story. This story is a 4-part adventure and it is really weird. I mean, think about the story on its own, it's weird enough, but considering where it is in the franchise, it is the second story in the Graham Williams era, or the Tom Baker show, as a few people like to call it. It is sandwiched between two of the greatest gothic adventures in the show's history, Horror of Fang Rock and Image of the Fandel. And it still has, like, Leela in it, a character known for her more savage-like stories. And this story is a bright, colourful, almost original series Star Trek level cheesy. It introduces K9. It's about them fighting bacteria. There's a scene where they fight in the Doctor's brain. What? But yeah, it is just... I don't even know if I could do it really justice talking to you like this. You don't really realise how weird it is until you watch it. But let's try anyway. Let's go and try. So the story starts off with a small crew getting sort of like intact on a spaceship on their way to the planet Titan, the moon Titan, sorry, which is part of Saturn's satellites. And it introduces our villains, the Swarm, a disease race infects people, become a host, and when contact is made, they try and spread as much as possible. And how they spread is like they got like this like crystal thing forming around their eyes, and they shoot lightning into other people's eyes, and that's how they infect other people. And I really like some of the elements that Bob Baker and David Martin do with this villain. For a great example is that how they're set up. They just seem to be wandering through space with no explanation on how they got there until they infect a small group of people, but slowly but gradually they start becoming a bigger and bigger threat until it doesn't seem like anything is out of their grasp. And there's a little bit of mystery. The story doesn't focus too much on where the hell they came from. It's just like they're just in space and they were waiting there for thousands of years, which gives them an almost mythical feel. And when they get infected, they start spreading across the ship of Titan and the satellite of Saturn. My apologies. And yeah, I just really like the build-up in this first episode. Whilst this is going on, the Doctor gets a distress signal from Titan, but it's later on is called off. Now, it's important to note that this story goes back to the original TARDIS room. Well, I say the original TARDIS room. What I mean is, goes back to the basic white background, because you might remember that in the previous season, the TARDIS was the Doctor uses the second control room, which had a more wooden feel to it. Now, I'm really disappointed that they went right back to this very similar style of the previous one. I think this would have been a great opportunity because the set for the previous TARDIS was warped and it was unusable when it was in storage, so they had to make a new TARDIS room. And I think this would have been a great opportunity to make another unique TARDIS, but instead they've gone back for a more traditional looking TARDIS, the white rounders, as some people might call, because of Day of the Doctor. And the walling on this TARDIS is, I think, is the one that stays up to the very end. You've got like you've got the motif, the round little motif, but you've also got these like pillar things in the corner, and you've got that big TV on one side of the wall with the shutters that open like that. So if I'm correct, that stays all the way up to the end of the classic era of Doctor Who. And I will admit, as somebody who now is like watching these retroactively, who have seen all the stories after this, to see this TARDIS design with this TARDIS console just looks really odd, in my opinion. It just looks really strange. I prefer it when it's the more 80s one, so that the console itself is similar designed to this background. But there you go. So yeah, so just to summarise, I wish they went with a more unique TARDIS design, something a bit more different. But it is a good design, and yeah, it's just classic. Yeah. So when the Doctor is trying to get the SOS, a lightning struck from him from the TARDIS, and once he's dead, the same message is now saying that don't worry, we're completely fine now. But Leela gets a feeling that something is wrong, that there is evil, and that voice is not human. And the Doctor kind of takes it, so he goes to see what the SOS is about. Now, Leela gets a lot to do in this story. She is basically the main character in this story. And to start off with, I didn't think this was a very good opening for her in this episode. She starts off asking a lot of questions at the beginning of the scene in which the TARDIS, and there's a bit where she's copying the Doctor's words, and the Doctor makes a joke that she's a parrot, and that is a really good funny moment. And then when she hears the voice, she kind of cowers behind his scarf like a child, and it's clear that maybe Bob Baker and Dave Martin weren't the biggest fans of Leela. I think they got her mixed up because she's supposed to be a savage, a warrior person who she might know right and wrong, but she knows that fighting, killing your enemies is the best way of putting them down, basically. And Bob Baker and David Martin here, they kind of write her like a child. She asks a lot of questions. She seems very incapable in that scene. However, throughout the story, they do write her a lot better, particularly in part one. It's just literally like the first few opening moments of part one where I wasn't really feeling Leela in this story. And when the Doctor and Leela leave, well, before that, after the Doctor's hit by lightning, he collapses onto the floor. And when he gets up, he knocks it. Tom Baker whacks into the TARDIS door, which I find really funny. So they go on Titan and they find a dead person. And so they go to investigate. However, when the Doctor does meet up with some crew members that have been infected by the swarm, they take over his mind. Yes, another story in which mind control is a part of the story. But this story does something a little bit different, because in those previous stories it was the companion. Here it's the Doctor, and it's because of this that Leela becomes a really big character in this story. So the Doctor's now possessed, and they basically explain that the nucleus, like the main one in the spawn, like the leader, is inside the Doctor. He will become the leader if he's purely infected. And Leela seems to be amused. She seems to be a reject. So they try and kill her as much as possible. They just have absolute hatred for her. And they send the doctor to get a gun and to shoot Leela in the back. Whilst here, Leela, now gone her separate ways, has met up with another character who starts off as a human being who explains to Leela what's going on about this infection and stuff. However, after when he starts shooting someone and tries to interrogate him, the swarm gets into him and he puts a visor to hide the fact that he's been infected, and he tricks Leela into taking the doctor to a much more populated place. And so the doctor, trying to fight it, goes into a sort of coma, but he can still kind of respond to questions. So Leela asks him what's the coordinates to the nearest hospital, and the doctor gives them, and then they fly off and they go into the next room, the next setting, the hospital. Now, a lot of people don't talk about this little moment because I find this really interesting. It basically heavily implies that Leela flew the TARDIS. Has the Doctor been giving her lessons? I really hope so. That sounds like a really cool idea. I hope there's an audio drama somewhere in which we see a scene in which the Doctor's teaching Leela how to fly the TARDIS. I imagine he gives a few of his companions TARDIS lessons. It'd be really cool. We do see the Doctor giving lessons to a few of his companions later on in the series, but here it's implied that Leela can fly the TARDIS, or at least when she's been given coordinates. So episode 2 is mainly set in the hospital, and the Doctor gets treated by a professor. I can't remember his name. I do apologise. But, and the Doctor kind of comes in and out of consciousness, talking to him about, telling him what's happening and stuff. And it's here that the Doctor meets a new faithful companion, as this professor used to have, he's a huge dog lover. He loves dogs. But when he came onto the space station and left Earth, he wasn't allowed a dog. So when he was there, he built his own dog. And we say hello to K9, one of the most popular companions in the entire series. And John Lesson, I believe his name is, does a fantastic job at bringing out K9's lovable personality, or lack of, because he's a robot. And his little affirmative master. Why K9 was made, I have absolutely no idea. I believe he was made to make the show a bit more kid-friendly, a bit more family-orientated, because Graham Williams was introduced as the producer of Doctor Who to try and make it more kid-friendly after the complaints of the Philip Hinchcliffe era. So this story could be, this reasoning could be why K9, but I can't find any official source that states that. The only thing really I can find is different designs of K9. And the original design, they were going to have somebody in like a human suit, robot suit, like that. And then Graham Williams told them no, they didn't want anyone to look like it was in a suit. And they went with the designer's third robot design, which then became K9. And so the Doctor, and so what happens then is that the guy before that was infected that Leela took with him, because he's wearing a blaster, he says that he injured his eyes, and so in the hospital he's been taken to an eye ward place, and he slowly starts infecting the place. He starts infecting the hospital more and more and more and more and more. Whilst this is going on, they get a communication with Titan, which send a ship crashing into the space station. You don't really realise until you think back how much happens in episode 2. They go to the hospital. The first scene is still on Titan. They go to the hospital. The doctor gets treated. He gets introduced to K9. The hospital gets infected. There's a crash. The doctor then asks K9 about cloning in this time period, and he asks the professor to clone him and Leela, and makes them shrink to microscopic levels, and goes into the doctor's head, and and this is what I think Bob Baker and Dave Martin have done here. A fantastic job is that they've broken the story to little bits, which keeps the story interesting. The first episode's on Titan. The second episode's in the hospital, with the cliffhanger of the small clones going into the Doctor's brain. Also in episode 2, we get a lot of scenes in which Leela is talking to K9, and they're having a little bonding moment, and I really like these scenes. I really like how Leela talks to him like a person, and then K9's like, "There's no need to thank me, mistress." And then episode 3, because the cliffhanger is the clones going into the head, is set majority in the Doctor's head, and we get and do you know how I've talked about this in the series? A lot of stories, just in general, not just Doctor Who, but mainly Doctor Who and Star Wars, have what we call the back of the ranch storytelling. What that is that you have two storylines going on at the same time. And you let one peak and you get back to the other. You let that peak in interest and then you go back and you keep doing that. And it keeps the audience interested. But have you ever heard a back of a ranch storytelling in which it's the two of the same characters? As the story goes from Leela and K9 protecting the Doctor from the swarm on the outside, who are trying to get the Doctor's body and trying to kill all of the people who are immune to them. And we also got the Doctor and Leela inside the Doctor's brain trying to find the nucleus, the main leader of this virus. And I really love the scenes inside the Doctor's brain. There's a lot of... It doesn't look anything like the brain. You never once believe that you're inside the Doctor's head. It feels just a lot like a really strange jungle. And I think there might be a little bit of an issue. But my God, these sets just look gorgeous. I absolutely love every scene that's in this place. I love the lighting. Love the atmosphere. This might be the only bit in this story where that atmosphere, that little bit of gothic tension that's in the previous story is still there. It's still in the nucleus of this story. See what I did there? And so the Doctor, the clone Doctor, meets the nucleus and actually has a conversation with a virus. And for some reason, in its first form, it's like a block with a crab arm thing coming out, and it talks like that. And it just looks really silly. And this is actually a really cool, interesting villain conversation, a villain speech. Because it starts off with the creature, just like any other villain, it's like, we have the right to survive. We demand that we survive. There's nothing wrong with that. That we use you like cattle. And then the Doctor's like, sure, but by that logic, I also have the right to survive. So I have every right to stop you from stopping you for my own preservation. And the creature actually agrees. It's like, yes, you do. Every creature in the universe has the right to survive. It's just a matter of who will win the fight. And that's a really cool little moment. I really like that this character is a bit more sympathetic in terms of its understanding of how survival works. And it's just like, yeah, Doctor, if you win, that's fair enough. But I want to win, so I'm going to beat you. and hopefully that will be fair enough. So, yeah. On the outside though, a lot more people are getting infected, and Leela gets knocked out, and so the swarm get inside the doctor's room, and they infect the professor, and so the professor actually takes out, by accident, the nucleus, as they were trying to get the clones out, but the clones had died, and the nucleus, knowing a bit of doctor's information, actually goes out the tear duct with the doctor's instructions, and so they go, and so the professor, now a swarm, goes and puts it into the machine to make it bigger, only for it to be the nucleus, and it comes into a new form, a new version 2, you could say, and it looks a little bit better. It's still really ridiculous. Now it just looks like a half crab, half dragon, a really small dragon. it's like that big, and because of the costume is a bit restrictive. It doesn't really able to do much apart from spout out villain dialogue, and yeah, and so episode 4 has them going back to Titan as they take the ship and go back to the planet, to the satellite Titan, in which they're going to use it to spread the virus across the galaxy, and Leela suggests that they just blow him up. Why not? The doctor's like, no, we need to have a much more intelligent way. And so they go back. Now, something else I forgot to mention, just a little fun fact. If the background to Titan looks familiar to you, it was the same set used for the television series Space 1999. So if anyone's seen that and it looks familiar, there you go, that's where it's from. So the Doctor goes back onto Titan, which is kind of like a nice bookend to the story. The start and the end is on Titan, and the story then becomes a sort of like base under siege as the Doctor and Leela and K9 go around as swarms. People infected are all over the place, and so they have to defend themselves. Yeah, and so we get thing, and then the Doctor wants to try and just stop it with because they extracted Leela's DNA to try and get an immune system, and which it worked. However, the Doctor drops it after somebody puts a gun to his head to try and stop him. So the Doctor has no choice but to have it explode. And Leela gets some pretty good fight scenes in this little bit. There's a bit where she like jumps onto a guy, and then yeah, there's a great moment in which K9's power starts deteriorating. So Tom Baker just ties like something towards it and just pulls K9 like that. I absolutely love it. And so Doctor and Leela and K9 leave, and the Titan base is destroyed. It explodes, and the scene goes back into the hospital in which they're gonna give K9 back, and they're shaking goodbye and stuff. But the professor reveals that he's going to head back to Earth and he can't take K9 with him, so is it okay if K9 comes with you? And the Doctor originally is like, what? You want me to take K9? And Leela, like a child, like I said in before, takes the Doctor's hand and is like, can we please have him? Can we please have him? And I really like that bit in that scene, because though it does show Leela a bit more like a child than a savage, It does have a nice warmth to it, and it does show that Leela and K9 have a bit of a bond, and Leela likes K9 around. But before the Doctor can even answer or anything, K9 goes into the TARDIS, and the Professor's like, K9's made up his mind. Ta-ra, Doctor, ta-ra, Leela, and they goodbye and the TARDIS leaves. And the story ends with a joke, with the Professor saying, I hope he's TARDIS trained. Which I was like, oh, that one's really cringy. That was just a terrible joke. So there you go. Overall, The Invisible Enemy is a pretty decent story. It's not the best. It has a lot of issues. It's very silly. It's very goofy, which might put off some people. Because a lot of the best Tom Baker stories, some of the best Fourth Doctor stories are the gothic ones. And this one's a bit more original series, Star Trek, a little bit more Space 1999, a bit more silly in that regard. But it's fun, it's enjoyable. It has Leela now stepping up as the main character for a story. It introduces K9, one of the most beloved companions. And I really do like the villain in this story, which, fun fact, only reappeared once more in a 7th Doctor audio drama, which I will be tackling. I can confirm that Revenge of the Swarm, I believe it's called, is going to be in this series. So there you go, that's The Invisible Enemy. So join me next time where we conclude Season 1 of Jago and Lightfoot. So join me next time for the Similarity Engine. I'll see you then on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.